Hello. So, we're at least 10 years into the drone industry, and I've got to say, it's been an amazing ride. We've gone from drones that could barely hold themselves in the air to now essentially capturing all these high definition 3D models and being able to analyze them in a fraction of the second with AI. But in all those 10 years, what's happened is that it's become really, really easy to actually capture data. And one of the things that I've noticed is that we're now coming to a point where we're almost capturing a lot of data, almost too much data. We'll have a look in this video. Hey everyone, I'm Varun from Hammer Missions, and in this particular video, I want to talk about an interesting insight or an interesting trend that I've seen in the industry. Essentially, we at Hammer Missions, we are a software AI provider that help building inspections be more fruitful using drones and AI. And one of the things that we've sort of seen is that instead of sort of having data sets that's used to be, 500 images, 1,000 images, we're now getting to a point where we sort of see some really large data sets coming through. So things like 3,000 images, 5,000 images, sometimes 10,000 images for a single building. And it does make us wonder why. We understand why from one perspective, because we understand that the industry somehow has created an incentive for more data to be more, as opposed to less data being more. And what I mean by that is essentially when it comes to data capture, you obviously don't want to revisit the site. You want to make sure that you get all the right data in the first go. So that makes sense that you'd probably want to capture a lot of data. But also, if you think about it, the camera manufacturer and then photogrammetry solution providers, they all have an incentive for you to actually capture more data than less data because the more data you use, maybe more quickly you have to replace that camera or that drone, or the more data you use, the more likely that the photogrammetry doesn't have any issues. Or, if you even think about cloud storage providers, they would obviously want you to have more data than less data. But the key question we've got to ask ourselves is that a good thing for the industry? More data is not really what the client wants. The client is actually asking for a drone inspection because ultimately they want to be more efficient. And one of the things that we have to tell ourselves in the drone industry, whether you're a drone service provider, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a contractor, an architect, or the client yourself, like your job really isn't to actually capture images, it's to deliver an outcome, it's to deliver an insight or to deliver a certain piece of information that allows making a decision much more cost effective and much easier than before. And so, whilst we're competing with traditional methods of doing mapping and inspection and search and rescue and all these different things that we do in the drone industry, it's important for us to sort of pause and ask ourselves, do we really want to get into a situation or we're not being efficient enough to actually compete with the traditional solution? Because if you think about it, if you had fewer images and if you're able to do more with less, you'd essentially have less problems along the way. So firstly, you'd have less data to move around, whether it's to move it from the SD card, to move it to the computer, to move it to the cloud. You just have less data to move around, and therefore you're lighter overall. Your processing time for the data is going to be a lot quicker because ultimately, you've got a fraction of the images as the next guy. If you think about the deliverable to the client, that's going to be a lot easier to absorb, whether that's a link to a platform, whether it's a report full of images. You have to kind of be mindful that not everyone has the highest speed internet connection that we as drone professionals might have. And so, again, thinking about what the what the requirements might be from an end client's perspective are completely different when it comes to digesting all that information. Sure, they don't need to have custom software, they can access everything over the cloud, but internet speed and bandwidth are still limited in many parts of the world, and we've got to think about how do we make our data delivery as bulletproof as possible. And so ultimately, I think what I'm coming to is that we've sort of given ourselves this trend in the industry where we are like, capture everything, leave nothing to chance, and that's all good. But I think part of maturing in the industry and part of essentially becoming a professional is to be able to actually do more with less. And can we actually be drone professionals that capture data to a certain level of precision where we are not over capturing, we are investing more time in careful planning, we're making sure we're taking just the right amount of images, we're paying close attention to things like overlap and the quality of the images and ensuring we're capturing data on the right day with the right camera settings. If we can improve the output per image and or in fact the output per pixel, we are actually in a much better place than to sort of say, well, we're going to just try and force our way into a solution by capturing, 5,000 more images as opposed to, 1,000 really high quality images. So I think that's kind of where I lie with these things. And a lot of it just boils down to planning. It boils down to flight planning. It boils down to operations planning. It boils down to, do you want to capture that site or that asset completely? Do you want to break it down into chunks? What makes more sense? And ultimately, investing in planning would pay dividends in the long run. And once you've got that sort of recipe of how to do it in a perfectionist way, you can repeat that time and time again and provide that amazing experience to the end clients where you're super light and nifty and you're able to actually move data around easily. You're able to provide deliverables that anyone can access, whether it's an engineer, whether it's a professional, whether it's management. And you're actually able to get much more exposure of drones and AI into the industry than previously was the case. So that's my pitch today in this video, is to sort of see if we can strive towards that efficient data capture and almost treat ourselves like professionals that are able to deliver more with less. And ultimately, a lot has to change for this. The optics of the industry have to change. We've got to kind of go away from the notion that a bigger drone is always better or a bigger camera is always better. I think we are kind of in this sort of hardware world where we sort of think big equals better, but that's not necessarily the case. As we know that there are many new lighter aircraft in the market that have much better cameras. And I think players like DJI are moving in the right direction where they're now sort of launching high quality payloads on smaller airframes, smaller aircrafts, which are much more portable and essentially make life a lot easier for everyone involved. And so we need to move away from this psyche of big equals better. We need to move away from the goal being images, whereas the goal really should be insights and decisions. And essentially, we need to make sure that all the data that we capture is leading to some action or some amount of planning or some decision that essentially all that efficiency gains from using drones and AI are actually paying for, which is what the industry is all about. So hopefully this video was helpful. Do let me know what you think of it in the comments box below. Obviously, I'm not advocating that you have to always optimize for the lowest data possible. And if the sites, if you have a bigger site when you compare it to a smaller site, that will obviously yield more data than maybe a smaller site. But what I'm saying is that maybe playing around with the planning and the operational constraints can sometimes lead to unexpectedly pleasant results. Let me know what your experience has been. Love to get a conversation going in the comments box, and we'll see you in the next video for Knowledge Hub.